Now it's time for part two of the extended interview with Ric Charlesworth. 1976 in Montreal, is that the one that got away?
Oh, it was, again, like an extraordinary adventure, I suppose. The team was very young. I was then the second oldest player, or second most senior player in the team in terms of internationals. We played some terrific matches, and if you like, for the first time, defeated India and Pakistan in a major tournament. They were the finalists in the World Cup the previous year, the preeminent teams in the world. That was a very significant thing for us. And then stumbled at the final hurdle against New Zealand. I played in the national team for 16 years. I think we probably played against New Zealand 25 or more times. It's the only day they ever beat us. So it was an exception. It was disappointing, but there was that's what happened. I think it was a letdown at the end. People don't understand that the 1976 Olympics was extraordinary because there was a boycott by the African nations, and indeed 38 countries boycotted the Olympics. And in the other pool, where New Zealand were, Kenya boycotted, and so that was part of. I think it was about South African rugby and playing in New Zealand or whatever, but. So by the time we got to the final, we'd played an extra game. On top of that, when you were level in points in those days, you had a repechage game to decide who went into the semi-finals. So between the last round game and the semi-final, we played a repechage game against India. That turned out being the longest game in history. We played 5 periods of extra time, and it was then decided on penalties. So by the time we got to the final, we'd beaten India twice and Pakistan once. New Zealand lost to Pakistan 5-1, I think, and then we met them in the final. But we probably had a couple of injuries. We probably did a couple of things tactically wrong. New Zealand had together a very experienced team that had been together for a long, long time, and on that day they matched it with us, and we didn't take our chances, and we lost by the odd goal. That can happen.
You referenced the longest game in history, and of course in those days we didn't have the reserves bench and interchange rotations that we have now. So I'm guessing players would have played every minute of those games.
Yeah. You played 70 minutes, and there were 5 periods of extra time. Then we had 2 periods, then 2 more, then a final one. And there was no sudden goal, no golden goal or anything. And then we were level and we had penalties, and probably the first time that penalties were ever used to decide a major match. So it was incredible tension and drama in that match, and that got us into the semi-finals. Then we had to play Pakistan, who of course were the favourites, undefeated, looked fantastic, and so beating them in the semi-final was a really significant performance for us, especially because we were a goal down after about 10 minutes. We had a penalty stroke given against us, which today couldn't possibly be a penalty stroke in a million years. It was a ball just hit at the goalkeeper who deflected it over the top. And so, we overcame a lot of sort of obstacles that seemed insurmountable, and then stumbled in the end against New Zealand. But I don't think our team we were young and raw and fresh and enthusiastic, but I don't think we were solid then. I think 4 years later we had a much better, more mature group. All of those players were 4 years more experienced and ready, and then of course we didn't get to go.
You were selected in 1980, and you were selected as captain.
Yes.
in 1980. And then the Australian Hockey Association, as it was then, my understanding is bowed to pressure from the government and withdrew. That must have been devastating.
Oh, it was. It was, there's no that's the same feeling that you have when you're the coach and you have to make selections for the Olympics. You know how important it is for the players. For some players, the Olympic chance comes along once in a lifetime. So for those that are selected at any time, it's a really significant thing. And to be in that group, to be told that we would be going if the Australian Olympic Committee, or the Australian Olympic Committee as it was then, decided to go, then we were delighted when they made that decision against the pressure of the government. And then for our sport to succumb to the pressure of the government was bitterly disappointing for the competing athletes, especially because if you look at it now, I mean, we're fighting in Afghanistan now. It was about someone else doing, you know, it was the easy option for a government to rather than to take action themselves to stop the competing athletes from going. And we were naturally bitterly disappointed. I mean, I think you have a love-hate relationship with your national association. There's lots of things they do. That was, you know, another brick in the wall for me as a player, and that they made that decision.
Did you contemplate retirement or giving the game away?
Oh, no, I felt like there would be more opportunities. I still felt like I could play. I loved to play. But yeah, it was crushing. I mean, earlier in the year my father died, and I think in some ways that was also a bitter experience and numbed me a bit for anything else that happened. You know, that was worse than anything else that could have happened that year. And then, you know, something else bad happened, which was the not going to the Olympics, you know. And I, at the end of that cricket season, I was the captain of Western Australia in cricket and preparing for the Olympics at the same time, and chose to stop playing cricket to go and play in Pakistan with our team. And of course, the cricket people said, well, that's not compatible with you being the captain of our team. We're going to have to drop you, you know. That was a big decision for me. And then, of course, we went to Pakistan preparing for the Olympics and then didn't go. So a lot of stuff went wrong.
Did the Board of Control, as it was then, or the Australian Hockey Association ever pressure you to make a decision between cricket and hockey?
Oh, no. Western Australia said, you know, we can't have this. You've got to make, if you're in our team playing for us during the cricket season, you've got to be available. You can't. And I understood that. I think that their position is perfectly legitimate. And so that was a very difficult decision for me to have to make.
So a couple of years later, you're working as a doctor, you're playing hockey, you're captain of Australia, and you decide to become a federal politician. What were you thinking?
Oh, yeah, I had been working in the hospital for a while. Then I worked in general practice, and I'd got to the stage where I didn't really think I wanted to remain in general practice. So I was either going to do some more study or something completely different. And the political chance came along. They're difficult to come by. I was involved in politics, interested, and even something like the Moscow boycott started to steal me, if you like, my political beliefs. But before that, it was obviously the Vietnam War, which was the big issue for a young student who was interested in politics. So I suppose when the political chance came along, you better take it when it comes, and that was what it came down to.
And it's not as if you were off a safe seat. You've actually off the seat at Perth, which was reasonably marginal.
Very marginal. It was one of the seats you had to win government, but I don't think I would have got the nomination had it been, because I had a profile as an athlete. But I suppose I had credibility as someone who was a bit more substantial than that too, you know. And so I think that that allowed me to win the seat, to win the nomination. And yeah, it was I always thought you can always go back and practice medicine. This is a chance, you better take it, you know. but yeah, becoming a candidate in the federal election is a big thing, and you know, we had to work very hard. You don't get paid anything to do it. At the same time, I was trying to juggle all the other balls, so it wasn't easy.
You referenced the Vietnam War. You would have been an age where you would have had to nominate for the draft?
Yeah. In 1972, we were. I was in the draft. When you turn 20, your birth, they chose, I think, 6 or 7 days a month. Maybe it was 10 days a month out of a lottery, and if your number came up, then you were in the draft. And I was elated when my number didn't come up, but yeah, I was opposed to the war, and of course my political involvement was becoming evident then, and you know, I supported the Whitlam government. The Whitlam government were elected, and our involvement in the Vietnam War stopped. That was a really good illustration of politics at work, the practical side of it. So I suppose that was part of me becoming interested in politics. But yeah, I was involved in protests against the war. I thought the war was ill-conceived, you know, and certainly not something that I was in support of. I share your concerns. I'm a few years younger, and I was also very relieved when when our involvement in the war ceased and the draft ceased. So yeah. You continue to play for Australia, you continue to captain Australia at the same time as doing what I'm guessing became the dreadful flight from Perth to Canberra regularly. How did you maintain your fitness and your skills? Well, you know, I was a senior player in the team and playing pretty well, and so that gives you a certain security, I suppose. Not a good thing for players to have too much of that, I would have thought, but probably, you know, in some ways at the top of my game. Maybe I would have been better physically in Moscow, but playing well and so the election was in the beginning of '83. The Olympics were a year and a bit away. The Prime Minister was very supportive. He said all along, you know, well, you can go to the Olympics if you. That's not going to hurt us at all. But yeah, the travel back and forward to Canberra is 20 weeks a year is hard work. But of course you're back in Perth every weekend. So in terms of playing hockey was okay. I just needed to keep my fitness. In some ways, doing less training at that stage in terms of the technical stuff wasn't such a problem. And but I didn't tour with the team every time either. During the time I was in the Parliament and still playing in the hockey team, I think there were 11 overseas tours. I went on 3. So I probably would have played many, many more matches had I done everything, you know. So my involvement was less over that period of time, but certainly in the year up until the Olympics in Los Angeles, then I didn't miss too many beats. I was able to compete in most of the competitions, and I was there. It was after that period it became more difficult. But and every lunchtime I used to run around the bridges in Canberra. I used to have a training program. There were things I could do. And I used to use the tennis courts at Parliament House to practice my skills. So there was a lot of stuff I could do by myself, but wasn't ideal. And over time, you can't keep doing that, I don't think.
Given you're a high-profile sportsman and being a federal politician, did that help the profile of hockey?
Oh, I think it probably did. I mean, I think I'm one of the people in hockey who's best known, I suppose, by the public because of all of the things that I've been involved in, I suppose. So I don't think that hurts hockey. Hockey should appreciate that, perhaps. But I mean, I'm happy to be an advocate for this game. I love this game. What I like about it, I think, is that this is a game about skill and speed and guile. It's not about brute force and beaten people up or strength and power. It's more than that, and it's a game that can be played by men and women, and the rules are the same. It's a game that, if you like, has real equality about it, and that families can get involved in and have a lifelong involvement with. And of course, at the highest level, we get the opportunity to compete at the Olympics. So it's got a lot of things to recommend it. You can get a game of hockey in almost any city in the world. And so for a whole range of reasons, it's something that spans the globe and ties people together.
All sporting codes, be it the football codes, cricket, athletics, swimming, are competing for the elite athletes. We still get high quality elite athletes coming to hockey. Does it surprise you that we still get those people coming given the things that are on offer elsewhere?
We should never take it for granted. I think it will become increasingly difficult. The media is incredibly biased towards the high profile stadium sports, who get much more support from the public purse than people realise. And indeed, it's damned hard, and we're heading towards perhaps a nation where there's only 3 or 4 sports that ever get any coverage at all, and a much more narrow and less interesting sporting environment. I hope that doesn't occur, but I can see it. That's the direction in which we're heading. Hockey needs to make a niche for itself, needs to establish a place for itself. It's not going to compete with Australian rules football, but it has to have a marquee environment, perhaps as ice hockey does in North America, whereby, we fill the stadium when we play, we have high quality entertainment, we have brilliant athletes, and we reward them as such, and that's the area. Unless we can do more about that, commercialising, if you like, the sport more and improving the coverage, then that'll be a hard battle, because my kids love to play and they're involved and they know what I'm doing, and they're in the local club, but they say, why can't we ever see it on sport? Why is it only not on TV? And so they sit and watch the AFL every weekend, and insidiously that sort of stuff happens. Now, hockey's got to work hard to counteract that.
If you go back to when you started playing, or you probably started in a 3-man offside rule, became a 2-man offside rule, we now have no offside. Is there other things we need to do with the sport, or can do with the sport, to make it more appealing to people who don't understand the intricacies of the game?
We've changed the rules and we've improved the game a lot, and I think that's a very good thing. And we have to continue to do that, I believe. The fundamental problem with the game, still in my view, is that it's too easy to defend. And indeed, some of the rule changes have made it easier to defend. No offside rule was going to make more goals, but it hasn't. And indeed, it would have made many less goals, because, as I suspected at the time, what it does do is means that every team has to defend with 11, as they do. And we'll go to the Olympics and see at the Olympics 1-0, 2-1, teams just defending the set tool and trying to counter-attack and make a moment in which they win the game. Maybe that's what the people who run the game want. I think what we ought to be doing is lifting the whole quality of the thing and making it easier to score goals or harder to defend. But the rule changes have made it easier to defend. You can now knock the ball over the back line. Anything's a tackle now. You beat me with the ball, I turn my back on you and run off with it. Goalkeepers they've got all this incredible equipment now, they can almost stop anything. The circle's full of people, so it's crowded as anything. If we hadn't brought in the backstick shot, which just came into the game accidentally, half the shots are being made from there. There would be half as many goals being scored as there are since offside changed. It's only because those two things occurred coincidentally that we're actually maintained our goal scoring standard. So my view is you've got to make the game harder to defend, and therefore people have to concentrate on scoring more, because scoring's the puzzle that you have to unravel if you and it's the exciting thing, the thing that stimulates the players. How are we going to make a goal? How are we going to get ourselves this opportunity? What are we going to do? And so for me, we should have less players on the field. We've had 11 players on the field for 150 years. but the field's the same size, the athleticism of the athletes, the equipment, everything's so much better. So there's not so much time and space out there anymore. And if we had less players on the field and less of them able to defend, then we would have a game in which you had to attack.
The argument always put forward when those ideas are talked about is the difficulty of umpiring, the number of players in a certain zone. Do you see that being overcome?
Again, what I'm suggesting would make umpiring easier. I would remove the corners. The corners are dangerous and unumpireable. The umpires cannot see what's happening. There's so much stuff happening off the ball. There's so many people in there. They can't even watch whether those people are breaking, whether those people are on the circle edge, whether this guy balks, what's going here, ball's going out there, I'm watching the ball now, who's blocking here. There's so much stuff happening that they have no chance to know, and it happens so quickly. They're unumpireable. Not only that, they're dangerous, and they rely on one very narrow skill that dominates the game. That's not a good thing. Our rules should have three principles: safety, simplicity, and skill. The three S's. If you had a set of rules which rewarded skill, were safe for the players, and were simple to understand, then now we've done a lot of things that have improved our game and made it better, and I applaud those things. But we have to keep thinking about it. We have to come up with a product which is attractive, exciting, interesting, understandable for the public. The game is so fast that it's damned hard to cover it on television, so we're doing clever things like getting lots of cameras and experienced cameramen to do it. We have to keep doing that, but we can make the game more simple, and we can make it more spectacular if we keep thinking smart and are willing to change the game. Fundamentally, though, you need skills and speed to win, and I hope that will continue to be the case. But the problem will be, you get to the Olympics and everyone's defending. You get to the major championships and there's emphasis on that. They don't want to have a goal scored against them. Then you're going to get some doer struggles. And sometimes the game turns into European handball, where it's just 11 players around the scoring D and everybody else passing the ball around and trying to smack it in there and get an error. I don't think that's so interesting. We can do better than that. And the way to do better is to take some players off the field and to make them, put them in attacking positions so they can't all defend. Then there's enough space to make a goal. The other thing that we did in our series in Perth was we made the goal bigger, because the balance between the goalkeeper's ability to save it and the size of the goal has changed dramatically. And I think that's a good thing.
Ric, is there a forum for the international coaches to provide feedback or input into the development of the game?
Don't you wish? I wish there was. The people who are most in touch with what's happening at the highest level and the nuances of it, and who keep pushing the boundaries and the borders of what we ought to do are the international teams and the coaches, and yet they don't get a say in a lot of this stuff. It seems to me that the International Hockey Federation's got its head in the sand. And I don't understand why, but then you look at an international federation like football, and they won't even have goal line technology in their game. And week after week, the errors are pointed out by the media. They want controversy, I'm sure. That's good for the game. Perhaps sells more newspapers, makes promotions or whatever. But for mine, I would like fidelity. I'd like truth and certainty in how we do it. And I think that there is a place for the elite coaches and players to have a say, more of a say. It's a pity that doesn't occur. We've had for 3.5 years now a discussion about protection for our players on the penalty corners, and we're still losing the argument. I don't understand why. As a coach, my concern is about duty of care for the athletes. We want them to wear a grill as the goalkeeper wears, but they're saying no, the goalkeeper's allowed one level of protection and the field player's another. I just do not understand.
It strikes me that the raised ball in our sport is arguably the most inconsistently interpreted rule of the game.
You won't get an argument from me. It's certainly that and obstruction, because obstruction's still in the books, and yet it's never hardly blown now, and so it allows you to just step across a player who has the ball and put your body in between and off you go. Now, I'm sorry, that's not skillful sometimes, that's just thuggery. But I can show you any number of examples of people getting away with that. And the high ball, yes, we're inconsistent about it. What we ought to do is allow the high ball and people to play with the ball above their heads, but the rule that governs it is danger. So if you do it in a dangerous way, it's always a free hit, you know. At the moment, was it above his shoulder, wasn't it? Maybe not, you know. And then, you know, the rules on danger are clear. Ball has to be avoided by someone and take evasive action or whatever, but then we're not seeing that consistently blown either, and then the little ball bobbles up that high and we get it blown as dangerous. So yes, it's very difficult, and I have a great deal of difficulty knowing about that. I think it's very hard for the umpires the way it is at the moment too. So we can improve that.
A little bit back to the future, but for the raised ball, if we brought the old hand stop back, would that make it clearer which player had right of way?
No, it's an interesting thought. I think we've probably made progress in that we've got the hand out of it, you know, and probably that would be back to the future. I'm not necessarily a fan, but I understand the point you're trying to make.